Hello everybody. So today I thought that I would cover a topic that kind of gets away from jazz or any specific genre. And, you know, this kind of makes me think my numbers are going up. I could possibly start my own cult. Welcome, my child. You have sought me out, and you have found me. You have come to me because you want to understand guitarology. It is quite simple, really. All that we must do is purge our minds of every type of musical thought that has come before, so that we might ascend to the next level. Yes. And in our understanding, as it grows. Well, that's about enough of that. But in all seriousness, let's start this off. The purpose of this video, of course, is to help you develop your own voice on the guitar. And all the little things that are entailed in that to go along with it. First off, of course, the obvious thing is your list of influences. So, you know, you have to start somewhere, obviously, and all the different people that you've directly been influenced by. Maybe it's a good idea to actually put it on paper. So, like, it seems kind of neurotic, you know, but just write down all of your influences and maybe, like, each individual thing that they have done that has influenced you. You know, down to the very detail, so that you can kind of visually see it. There's maybe a theory associated with this, where it's one thing to internalize all of our thoughts in our cognitive processings, but it's another thing to actually see it so that it goes through, it's feeding through the visual cortex. It's not just here, you know, like internalized. That's my own personal theory. I haven't read any white papers pertaining to this, but in theory, the more sensory data you process, you know, you might kind of burn gray matter or help you piece things together in a different way. I think you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, like anything you can think of that pertains to this player or that player. I mean, me personally, there's the list would be, I mean, it would fill up this entire book. All the people that I think have influenced me in different ways. Also, you know, like exploring and trying new things, right? So it's important to keep an open mind. So maybe this new trend comes along, and it's not really something that's to your liking specifically. Yeah, like I was playing like a little improvised chord progression in the beginning. I literally just thought of that progression a minute before I started recording the first video segment. And I was thinking to myself, you know, maybe I'll throw some slapping type, popping type deals in there, you know. So a lot of that stuff, you know, for me comes from listening to different bass players or other guitar players that have done the slapping thing. Even though it's not something I focus on all the time, you know, it's important to keep that open, you know, as like a possibility, because all the different variations that you can add just kind of give depth to your playing and give you options. Keeps your audience engaged. Like your audience, they don't want to see the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. They might for a while, you know, but you know, so the diversity of content and approaches. Okay, and the next thing, of course, is going to be like a big one, and it's kind of like coming up with creative solutions for musical problems, right? I was talking to somebody last night, you know, and I was kind of like focusing on, you know, like some of the stuff that I come up with is based on trying to solve problems, musical problems. Like I might be listening to a lot of classical piano stuff or something, and like I hear like Liszt or one of those types of romantic period composers, and they do a lot of really flashy stuff that sometimes involves like arpeggiated figures that are harmonized. So I'll go like, well, I don't want to, you know, do it this way or that way. Like what are my options, you know? Yeah. So, you know, if you're playing more of those kind of declamation type things that are just like bam, that's one thing you can do, and double stops, right? But if it's like more of a figure that's based in sixteenths, you know. You know, that kind of technique might be needed. And that's just one example of, you know, like coming up with a creative solution. It's not exactly the same thing that might have been played by this composer or performer or improviser. But, you know, as long as you can kind of get in the ballpark, and that allows you to create your own sounds, like your own approach. It's like I also say a lot of times with I do that Baroque improvisation, like what was in the intro, you know. It's like entirely improvised. It comes from listening to Ted Green and some of his approaches, and then applying it in two hands the way I play. And but at the end of the day, you come to realize that that's just a sound. It's not like a highly contrived thing. It's just like, here, you know, each genre or approach, you know, has its own sounds, chord progressions, cliches, things like that. And then we're just kind of playing off of that, you know, like if I'm just in C major. Messing around, and some of those modulations are not exactly kosher, you know, or whatever, but yeah, whatever. But it's a sound, you know. It's something that you can use. You could take that, like I've done many times, like take autumn leaves or something. You start playing around with different registers, you get away from that strict Baroque sound, and you start, you know, exploring like polyphony within the context of like a different feel, you know. You know, and I've also heard like Brad Mehldau do other tunes, you know, and like kind of go off the rails. Other types of pianists go off the rails with. It's not like strict 4/4. It's not a rubato. It uses a lot of polyphony and things like that. That's kind of erratic or something, you know. Right. Yeah, like the little transition clip that I was doing in the beginning when it went to the dream sequence. You know, like we've heard that kind of shit on harp, or you know, whatever kind of Looney Tunes music or something. You know, trying to figure out ways to imitate different instruments, different effects. Maybe but without using a pedal effect. You know, like that's another thing. Like I recently got this cable. It's one of those latching Diodario cables with a kill switch on it, right? So I can play around with like kill switch type sounds. I might end up putting one in just to have it. Kind of neat. Let's see. Oh yeah, like so another example that I wrote down I wanted to demonstrate was like okay, so for a while I was looking for a B-bender guitar. You know, play tellies, like I'm into the whole telly culture, you know, the whole Telecaster culture and all that. I was like thinking, damn, I really like all this B-bender string pull stuff, you know. I'd like to really find one, you know, and I kind of couldn't find one, and I was like, whatever. How am I gonna do this in the meantime, you know? So like, you got the behind the nut, the bend, you know. So I use that in that Stevie Wonder, Jeff Beck, you know. Use it there, you know. I was thinking, like, how do I do this in a more practical way? You know, so I started messing around with left-hand bends, like fretting. And that kind of led me down a whole other path, like where I was, you know, like finding all these interesting things. You know, like doing more more expressive playing as a result of like using left hand bends, you know. So it got away from the country thing and sort of like cross-fertilized this other area musically. Not that I don't like the country thing, it's just I don't typically do it a whole lot. But all that stuff, of course, like is influenced roughly by Scotty Anderson, and I just do it my way. That kind of double stop sound where you got notes flying all over the place. Really, there's a lot of different players. Like I stole this lick from James Burton by way of Greg Koch. Okay, yeah, so the other thing, maybe perhaps the biggest thing here is like finding the right guitar, right? So for me, I played a lot of different guitars. I didn't really feel like I found an instrument that could do everything I needed it to do until I started playing a Telecaster style guitar. And that has a lot to do with just everything about it, but mostly the pickups, and I've always put guitar MIDI pickups and stuff on my instruments because, that's just what I do. That's what I'm apt to do. What do I like? I'll give an example with my particular scenario. So what do I like about this? Okay. It's been said before, it has everything you need and pretty much nothing that you don't. But it's much more than that in my case, the way I see it. It's this particular guitar, the neck pickup's known as being pretty dark, especially when you roll off the tone control. So you can get a really nice kind of jazz box sound. Which is useful for, not just that, but the two-handed thing, it just responds so well to this polyphonic tapping I found. It doesn't produce a lot of extraneous finger noise. It kind of gets rid of it. The single coils do that. Humbuckers tend to like give you a thump, thwack type of a finger noise. I don't know why. I don't know the physics behind all of that. But it does. So there's that. There's also the bridge, which I found, again, is useful for all different types of things, particularly distortion. It's got like a nice, you can add distortion to this thing, and it's got a nice rounded tone when you roll back a little on the tone control. You get a Holdsworthian kind of a thing, like this. Just like it's got a nice rounded tone to it. all of the tapping responds really well with it too, but in a different way. So it sort of has like a clavinova type of response or something and brightness. And then you go to the neck pickup with a little grit on it, a little overdrive. Real nice and smooth. And of course, with the tapping, it's even more responsive, I think. And we'll kick that off. So yeah, so that's just an example. Obviously, what I do a lot of the time is this two-handed tapping stuff. That's like I'll do a little bit of hot house. Right. Yay. So, you need to go out there and just like, if you really want to find your own voice on the guitar, it's go out there and try all these different instruments, like stuff that you never even wanted to play in the first place. Hollow body guitars. If you're a hollow body player, try a solid body guitar. Maybe the guitar is not even your thing. Try out some basses and mess around with this, mess around with that. Switch over to acoustic. Play with that, play with this. Maybe, any of the other instruments in the string family, try some of those out. Maybe you want to play mandolin or banjo or something, and just so happens, oh wow, you really fall in love with it, and it changes your whole perspective on what you're doing. I don't think there's any really right or wrong way to go about that. Also, hand in hand with that is finding the right amp and effects. So, a lot of people, they read a lot of publication materials, and some of these materials will be like, you can't get a good sound unless it's a tube amp, and all of this. And I love tube amps; they sound amazing. Or they'll say, that's all ancient history. Now the way to go is just all digital and all the, You need to try this stuff out yourself. Don't just take somebody else's advice or viewpoint on it. Try all of it out yourself and find out what works for you. And within that, there are basically two things I think to consider. There's the sound itself, right? Like how it sounds. And then basically the response, like the finger response. How it makes your fingers feel. And this is very, very important, okay? Because if you're getting a weird kind of a haptic feedback loop going with the way the amp is responding to your guitar and the way you play, you will not, if you're not comfortable, you will not play your best stuff. You will not enjoy what you're doing. And you need to enjoy it on every level. On a tactile sense, you need to be able to enjoy the way that feels, so that there's a positive feedback loop developing between your ear and the amps producing, these sounds, so on and so forth. So it's vitally important, I think. And then once you do that, it's like opens up. It's like getting better paint and canvas or something, so that you can do your best work. Whereas you're not trying to like create art with materials that are inferior or don't suit what you would want to do in the first place, right? Okay, and now we're coming to, what are you trying to say versus the techniques that you actually need, right? So, it's really important, I think, to think critically about what you are trying, or what you want to do musically, or what you want to say musically, and what you should be practicing. So maybe you find yourself spending an inordinate amount of time practicing all this other stuff that you'll never ever use, and it just makes you feel bad, and and it doesn't help you at all. So maybe all these flashy new guitar players on Instagram are doing all of this stuff, and you're like, I have to know how to do this, I have to know how to do that technique. And then, well, play around with it, try some exercises and try to incorporate some elements of it. But just because you can't do what they're doing doesn't mean you're a failed musician or you're inferior or something. That's just how they do it. Who knows how many years they spent developing that anyway. You need to think critically, like, am I going to spend the next year learning to become an expert guitar slappist, and then none of the music that you're going to write or you're going to play involves any of that technique at all? Like, you don't play Animals as leaders or Polyphia or any, then why spend that much time trying to master it or beat yourself up about it, So it's much more about thinking about what the end product is going to be. Like, if you're gravitating towards jazz and fusion and all this stuff, that's a different set of priorities than if you're going to be a cutting edge modern rock player, or a country, or world music of some kind. And then you start from there, and then you start branching out with these different techniques. Like, what can I do with this? What can I do with that? I always tell people one of the things to do is to actually just, regardless, I think, of what type of player you are, you need like a fingerstyle sort of background of things, right? You know what? I think I wasn't going to do this, but I think I'm gonna throw this in. So, like, I would sit around with an acoustic all the time and do arrangements, fingerstyle arrangements of different things, and just figure out everything like that I could play, and then anything that I couldn't, especially improvisationally, I would go two hands, or then, maybe I would arrange some ideas 2 or 3 ways: fingerstyle, tapping, or something else, something using harmonics or whatever. But I'll just play this, like this. It's like I do arrangements in case, for example, if somebody ever asked me, Tory, we want you to play the national anthem at this game or whatever, what would I do? I don't want to just show up and go. I don't want to do that. So I went ahead and prepared something many years ago. Here we go. I don't know that a lot of jazz guitar players sit around and work on stuff like that. Probably, you know. But that you don't have to be just a jazz guitarist or a classical guitarist or a rock guitarist. It's like you need to have techniques that make you a more complete musician, right? So that you can, like, again, solve these musical problems and do all these things. And that will help contribute to developing your individualistic voice, just because you have more facility to actually create thorough, complete musical concepts, as opposed to, here is a riff that I know, and then that's all you can do. Or like, here's a riff, here's a solo, you know, like, that's, I'm not knocking that kind of thing. I'm just saying it just leads to more of the same thing. You're reliant on a computer to complete a complete idea, to do a complete idea musically, right? And that affects your manual dexterity, your comprehension, your creativity. You know, like have you ever had an incident where, like, you had this brilliant musical idea, but then you were scrambling to get the computer loaded up or something so you could record it, or, you know, film it or something like that, or your phone or whatever, versus just being like, oh, I'll remember what that was, and you know, or write it down, you know. Or the point is, being reliant on too many machines, it again kind of limits your creativity, your manual dexterity. You know, I don't know. That's just my personal take on it. Maybe I'm stupid or something. Okay, and yeah. So this one is a very important, and that's letting go. Okay, just let go, let it go. You know, specifically what I'm talking about is that you're not gonna be that guy, you know, Mr. Cool, that's like got 10 billion followers or whatever. I mean, some of you might, but you know, I'm saying you can't be somebody else. Like, you know, when we start playing, or even if we've been playing for many years, the tendency is to kind of loosely live vicariously through another player. You know, to kind of like when we're on stage, we imagine that we're Jimi Hendrix, or we imagine that we're whoever it is, you know. I think we've all done this, you know. It's just like a psychological thing, you know. At some point, you just have to let go and just accept that, you know, for better or worse, you have to be true to yourself and just drop all of the stuff that, you know, like, don't play that guy's lick every time. Don't play this guy's, you know, stuff every time you do that one chord, or you know, maybe instead of playing, like, looking to completely perfectly imitate the band's sound or the guitar tone of this, and then just do a tune your way. Just, like, find a new way to do the same song, you know. And the purpose of this is just like personal and philosophical musical growth, right? It's kind of painful for a lot of people to drop all of that, because that's what gives them happiness to play music, is like, how I can get Steve Vai's guitar and I can play every lick that he plays, and I'm Steve Vai for 15 minutes or whatever when we're on stage, you know. I understand that. That's cool. But the world doesn't need another Steve Vai. Steve Vai already exists. You know? That's the kind of thing. And for some people, when they come to that realization, they're just like, fuck music. I don't like this anymore. Like, you know, like, but that's what makes this hard. This is difficult because we are trying to do many things at once. We're trying to find our place in musical society. We're trying to develop all of our techniques. At the same time, we're developing our write and musical composition skills, and our taste and comprehension and listening ability. just keep on plugging away at it, and eventually you'll develop your own thing, but you just have to be, you kind of have to be a little bit honest with yourself, and even if that's painful, and pretty much, open your mind completely to other things, like just whatever it is, some new type of music that you didn't even, like I really liked the band Shakti. Like when I first heard them, I was just like, wow, what, like, I was kind of like, I always thought maybe there would be this, like our Western ears, like it's like an exotic thing, right? Like it's a fusion of Western and Eastern ideals musically. But to them it's probably just like normal sounding, right? They hear like country music and they're like, it's kind of exotic to them. Keep your mind open to these different things. Yeah, and that includes, every genre you can think of. Your diehard metal and all this stuff or whatever, Maybe you listen to some rap artists. They're not guitarists per se, but there's like a flow to the way they rhyme and the way they phrase their vocals that kind of can be useful in formulating many different things. It doesn't have to be just like you're taking directly from their genre and then copying it over into, now it's rap metal, but in more subtle ways. The same thing goes for the classical. Watching classical guitarists and just taking a few things here and there, and just kind of like learning that. And it just works its way into your playing, and then people hear you and they don't know where all of that came from. And that's because you're hybridizing your approach. So, and again, this is one of the big ones for me is like listening to other instruments, right? And as I've said many times, like I've listened to a lot of pianists, jazz pianists, fusion keyboardists and stuff, and that's like kind of my bread and butter is like, they have shown me different ways to approach polyphonic, two-handed playing, but in a way that gets away from the mores of the classical and romantic and baroque eras that have been established, which I love those too, but we're all always looking for new and contemporary and modern sounds, and not just stuff that's dissonant, but stuff that has like a new type of hip consonance to it or something, right? And that leads you to different avenues, like these kind of sounds. Like all of that, it's just like adaptation, right? Just trying to constantly evolve from where you are and have fun. Like have fun with this. Find ways to have fun with it. a lot of lead guitar players probably would like to listen to violinists more for just like cues on vibrato or just different types of licks that are in the literature. You might end up sounding like Malmsteen or something, you know. But I mean, that's just like an oversimplification of, like, you know, classical fast playing means you sound like this, you know, or like that, you know. It's just like also like learning all of these different fundamental things. Like really mastering your arpeggios, for example. All those kinds of techniques, you know, however you do it. If you play the pick, you play with your fingers, you know, whatever. The fundamentals, you know, if you got the fundamentals down where you really can play stuff at different tempos cleanly, then you're unfettered by all of these other notions. You know, you can kind of drop worrying if you have your shit together and just focus on the notes or the sound or the mood. And I think that's pretty much about it. I didn't really prepare any type of outro music, partly because I thought I would just do a wild, free-form improvisation. Whatever comes off the top of my head, I have no idea what I'm going to do. But I hope you've gotten something out of this, and I hope that it helps you to develop your own voice on the guitar. So I'll see ya in the next video.